This is the Riftbreaker. It's a game I covered over 2 years ago as part of a sponsored deal, and, well, we're back with it to follow up and see how it's been trucking along over the past 24 months. And boy, has it been trucking. Exor Studios have been hard at work keeping the game updated with free content, world expansions, new features, as well as large paid DLC expansions to up the ante. And today, the game is receiving its biggest one yet, by far, with World Expansion 3 and the Heart of the Swamp. I really enjoyed the Riftbreaker when I played it back in 2022. It brought a really interesting and unique mix of in-depth base building, frenetic combat, and truly insane scale, showcasing situations that I still can't believe I'm seeing on screen, with hundreds and hundreds of individual units, insane lighting effects, and just a purely incomprehensible amount of stuff. The gameplay was robust too, with tons of depth afforded to both its base building strategy elements and its feverish breakneck action, thanks to many customizable items, abilities, and tactical paths to trek down. So I'm quite excited to jump back into it today. Now this video is split into two parts. The first is a kind of refresher on the game and explaining what it is and how it plays. And the second is a bit of a dive into the new expansion and the free content update, which is out now. And there's also a wee discussion on the one feature that this game really needs. One thing I loved about that initial sponsored video is that the requirements for me were super chill. They basically just told me to play the game and then talk about what I thought of it, and let the good people know that there's new content that's available to play. And yeah, those requirements are the same here today. So yeah, this video is sponsored by Exor, but they didn't require a preview before it was posted, and they haven't provided any specific talking points apart from the fact that there is a new expansion. I will mention that if you want to give the game a try, then there is a free demo on Steam, and yeah, love to see that. I wonder if we can bring back demos for every game. Anyway, let's get back into the Riftbreaker and see how it's faring in 2024. There are timestamps included, so if you're already familiar with the game, you can just skip ahead to hear about the new content. Combat is of course a massive element of the Riftbreaker, which we will get to soon, don't you worry. But base building is perhaps its biggest, most important mechanic. In every scenario of the game, whether that's a new campaign, a rift to a new part of the planet during said campaign, or a survival mission, you're tasked with deploying and building up a base to both defend yourself and research the critical technologies needed to get stronger and open up rift portals to transport yourself somewhere else. Which in the campaign is the method that you use to get into each of the DLCs, among other things. Starting a new base follows a similar path every time, but there is absolutely latitude available depending on what you want to go for, just like a regular RTS. You've got your core structures like your headquarters and an armory, which provide functionality to your operation. You've got the resource gathering apparatus you need to set up to harvest the variety of minerals and fauna around the map, and of course everything related to base defense, including walls and a range of different turrets and the support structures that they require to keep them running. It sounds like a lot, and I mean, yeah, it kind of is, but in the campaign you don't get access to everything at once, so it is a bit of a gradual process to unlock all the game has to offer through the research tree. Resource locations have a massive impact on how you play, as they almost always determine your flow of operations because of their location. Because harvesting a resource reliably means being able to protect it, so there's always interesting and satisfying challenges in deciding how you're going to lock a resource down and make sure the spice always flows, so to speak. All roads lead to Rome, as they say, and in the Riftbreaker, Rome is fighting. No matter how you go about constructing your wonderful walled city, the local beasts will not be stoked about your presence, and you will need to defend yourself from their brazen, unjustified attacks. The direct control over the mech suit you inhabit is your primary means of wiping out the alien menace, and to do so there are a bunch of different melee and ranged weapons at your disposal, ranging from swords to chainsaws, to this really cool new trident from the DLC, as well as machine guns, flamethrowers, grenade launchers, and much more. You get one weapon in each hand, and you can swap between multiple at will, meaning you're basically always armed to the teeth, even when you temporarily run out of ammo for your favourite gun. To go at the other end of your gun, there are a ton of different enemy types too, and the game has continued to be updated with more and more varieties of them. Of course, the ones you run into will depend on the biome as well, but you'll encounter swarms of smaller melee units, and these massive chonkers, and nimble ranged opponents, and basically everything in between. They can also come with specific resistances depending on the type they are, but thankfully, everything does, at the end of the day, follow the same simple rule. Shoot it enough, and it'll die. Your starting weapons do change depending on the game type and biome you're in, but you can unlock all the weapons no matter the scenario by travelling down the research tree, which includes 3 individual paths to pursue. Now, yeah, I get it, there is a lot in here, and it can seem a bit intimidating to start. But what I love about this tree is that, 1, there's a ton of stuff in there, and it's all quite meaningful, but you can also queue stuff up, so it never feels like you're under pressure to make sure something's always being researched, because you can just have like 20 going at once. And thankfully, research goes fast enough that you basically always are getting new stuff and becoming more powerful, which is really satisfying. You can basically reap the rewards every few minutes, especially at the start. The research system also ties into the game's crafting. Here you can build those fancy new weapons that you unlock, as well as upgrades to your mech suit and special abilities. I really do love this system because of how much customization it allows. Your mech is an extension of yourself, and the number of different things you can do with it means no two will be the same. You interface with the mech with the familiar WASD controls, and the camera is always focused with it in the middle of your screen, so it's impossible to really get lost or be unclear of where you are, even if there are literally hundreds of units beating down on you from every direction. I like how the suit controls, and even when base building I find it's pretty easy to position it, and there's only a couple of times where I found myself kind of caught up on a building or a piece of the environment. It does work really well. You switch between build and battle modes with the control key, and once you get used to a few of the hotkeys, you'll be swapping like a pro, effortlessly wiping out enemies while repairing your base and building new turrets to fight off the next wave. Speaking of repairing, I don't know if this feature was in the game when I first played, I don't remember it, but it could have been, but being able to mass repair and also have it reconstruct any buildings that were destroyed is really useful. It's a lovely quality of life feature, and it's something that makes feeling having half your base be destroyed not quite as bad. You do love to see it. Because yeah, that happens to me quite a lot. I guess we should talk a bit about visuals, but honestly I feel like they kind of do the talking themselves. I praised the Riftbreaker on its graphical and performance prowess back in 2022, and even with the last 2 years of new game releases and more impressively gorgeous games, the Riftbreaker still blows me away. Not just with the density of things on screen, but also the sheer quality of the assets and effects, as well as how just good it runs. I still don't really believe what I'm seeing sometimes. How there can be so much going on while looking this good and running this well. It just boggles the mind. I look at the lighting in particular, how the effects of the gunfire and explosions react with the environment and the weather. Some of these new biomes with the DLC really do accentuate the visuals too. Like, Exor really cooked here. The performance is also just especially good considering my system, apart from the GPU, is getting on the older side. And keep in mind, all of this is while I'm recording 1440p gameplay at the same time. There is a benchmark tool as well, which you can use to ensure that things will stay smooth, even when the action gets hot. And I love how, while the CPU benchmark just puts lots of stuff on screen, the GPU benchmark just unleashes this particle effects graphics card monster to try and crush your system. It's quite cute. Thankfully, even if the benchmark doesn't run the best, there are a ton of options in the menu to tailor the visuals, including various upscaling methods to get you some free FPS. Personally, I have been running FSR, and while I did notice a few weird oddities, particularly in the shadows once or twice, it's really not that bad, and I only really noticed when I was looking for it. I think the extra frames are probably worth it, but it's up to you. So, since my first video on the Riftbreaker, there have been 2 significant DLC drops, with the third, Heart of the Swamp, releasing in conjunction with this video. Metal Terror was just on the horizon back in mid-2022, and after a delay it did launch to pretty good reviews. It brought a story expansion to the campaign as part of the paid portion, but it also came with a bunch of stuff for all players as part of the world expansion, a trend that continues with this newest DLC. Basically, Exor have maybe one of the most impressive track records of doing right by the community that I've maybe ever seen. They've been posting updates to the game basically every week since launch, and even before that, from what I can tell, and they have run tons of betas and community trials for updates to ensure that they're delivering what people actually want by expanding the content offering for players who both want to pay and those who don't. Because these world expansions are nothing to sneeze at, this first one for example included the new biome, a survival mode to experience it, new creatures, new techs, new weapons, and more, all for free. The same went for World Expansion 2 in the paid portion with the Into the Dark DLC. There was a new campaign and a story portion for those who bought that DLC, and new biome, techs, weapons, etc. for everyone. It's a great way to do things and it is very player friendly. If you bought the Riftbreaker 3 years ago, man, you have made back your purchase value, and then some. I should also quickly shout out the integrated mod manager, which is super cool, where you can download community made mods from a really massive selection running game. It might even inspire you to make your own. Always love to see mod support in current year. So props for that. So then, that brings us to Heart of the Swamp and World Expansion 3. This is the biggest single update to the game since its launch, and alongside its headlining feature contains tons of bug fixes and new features. It's actually been in open beta for a while now, so you might have experienced a lot of this already, but if you haven't, it's out in full today with a brand new campaign expansion for the paid DLC, and for everyone there is a mucky, gross new swamp biome, new creatures, weapons, and 2 new survival maps, one in the swamp and one in more of a forest. The swampy biome is interesting because it really restricts how you build your base by having all these multiple islands surrounded by inhospitable muck. So it makes base building really hard and really confined. And thankfully, like earlier DLCs, there's a bunch of new technologies to help tame this new landscape. Like I said, the new DLC is launching in conjunction with this video, and it can be played, well, right now. But be warned, I've played some of the new campaign, and it is quite hard. The devs kindly provided me with a save game to jump right in, and while it did make me feel pretty self-conscious about my own bases, because the base they've supplied is, well, magnificent, it was great to experience a bit of the new biome outside of the survival mode. Which is cool, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to have some goals and objectives sometimes, rather than the standard survival scenario. Alright, we've gone long enough, it's time to discuss the elephant in the room. Co-op. Where the heck is co-op, man? Well, it is a bit of a long story. You see, in my original video I mentioned that co-op probably wasn't too far away, and that it would hopefully be available later that year in 2022. Clearly, that didn't happen, so what's going on? Well, according to the devs, this game was just not made with multiplayer in mind. This has meant that stapling on that feature has basically been realised as impossible, which has led them back to the drawing board to rebuild massive portions of the game to accommodate this highly requested feature. But accommodate they plan to do, and they've even showcased the mode earlier this year in multiple developer streams. So yeah, it is real and it does seem to be happening, actually. But there is no firm date yet. I know it sounds familiar, but hopefully this year. There is a beta sign-up form, which I will leave in the description that you can fill out if you want to try multiplayer when it's in beta, and even though it doesn't provide a solid date of any sort, it is a good sign that Exor are probably confident that they'll have something sometime. As many people have said many times, this game will be fantastic as a co-op experience, and I am really looking forward to enjoying it when it's available. It can't come soon enough, I'm quite excited. I know this is a sponsored video, but I can wholeheartedly say I have loved coming back to the Riftbreaker. When I saw the email in my inbox about it, I was hyped. I loved my time with it back in 2022, and I think I enjoyed it even more this time around. Even if I am nowhere as good as some of the people I see online, those bases, oh man, makes me embarrassed to look at mine. But yeah, cheers to Exor for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching it. You can check out the game via the link in the description below, and let me know if you do. I'd love to hear how you liked it. You can pick it up on Steam, GOG, Xbox, PlayStation 5, pretty much wherever you get your games, for the standard price of $30 US, and the DLC goes for $10 a piece. And again, there is a demo to try for free if you want to trial it before buying. Thanks to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members who keep the lights on around here. That's to Kaio, Bad Ghosts, Sean, Grey Spirit 4, George, King Thickums, Pavel, Bram, Christian, Dan, Orion, Dasrufkin, and Cameron, plus my paladins, Johnny, Marika, Age of Cores, Joe Tank, and Empyrean. So thank you again very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.